if currency other than UAE dirhams is used for accounting, then amounts should be converted to UAE dirhams using the exchange rate set by the Central Bank of the UAE in the following order: spot rate, average monthly exchange rate, average annual exchange rate. And in few minutes we will go through the demo that comprises the tax return of 9 main steps or parts depending on the questions answered by you, where it will allow you to report your taxable income including any relevant adjustments such as exemptions and reliefs claimed. As mentioned by Hissa, there will be a question and answer session at the end of the webinar to answer any questions related and limited to corporate tax return. We would like to highlight that the Ministry of Finance and Federal Tax Authority launched an initiative to waive the late registration penalties under the corporate tax law. Please, we encourage you to benefit from this initiative where it should be applicable to corporate taxpayers and certain exempt persons required to register with the Federal Tax Authority, where they will need to submit the tax return or annual declaration within 7 months from the end of the first tax period, where full compliance with the provisions of the corporate tax law applies. Now let's move to the key points to take into consideration before filing. Starting first with the taxpayer details. Please note that you do not file your return if either your entity type or tax period is incorrect. As an example for the entity type, you are registered as a natural person instead of a juridical person. You will need to apply an Emirate tax to change your entity type and tax period if needed, and only file your return once the FTA has updated the entity type or either the tax period, where we will highlight exactly in few minutes where it should be amended. Moving to the small business relief, as we receive a lot of questions on the small business relief, please note that if taxpayers with revenue equal to or less than 3 million dirhams qualify to claim the small business relief, the corporate tax return is simplified where the small business relief is elected and no corporate tax is payable. So you do not need to attach your financial statement, but must be able to prove your revenue when requested by the FTA. And you may refer to the Corporate Tax Guide on Small Business Relief for more details and guidance. Let's move to the elections now, where there are certain elections that are irrevocable. Please pay careful consideration to the current and future tax consequences of each election before you make a decision, where the irrevocable elections are realization basis, transactional rules, and transfers within qualifying group. Now let's move to the financial statement. All taxpayers, excluding the small business relief, need to attach their financial statement to the corporate tax return, where taxpayers with revenue of not more than 3 million dirhams in a tax period can use the cash basis of accounting. However, taxpayers with revenue of more than 3 million dirhams in the tax period will be required to prepare their financial statement in terms of the IFRS or IFRS for SMEs where applicable. And an important note to highlight here that the financial statements must be signed and stamped before attaching it to your corporate tax return. You need to consider whether you should engage an accountant with an appropriate experience to assist you with the preparation of the financial statements. Moving to the nil returns, as we receive a lot of inquiries of the same. If you earned no revenue during the tax period, you can elect the small business relief, in which case the return should be simplified. If you do not elect for the small business relief, you need to complete the normal corporate tax return process, where amounts are nil. You need to populate nil in the relevant fields. And finally, for free zones. Please note that not all free zone companies are qualifying free zone persons. Qualifying free zone persons are taxed at a rate of 0% on their qualifying income only. Please refer back to the corporate tax law, the corporate tax guide on free zone persons, and the ministerial in addition to the cabinet decision for more information. Also, please note that the qualifying free zone persons may elect to subject to the normal corporate tax regime. So let's start now the corporate tax return demo, where we will walk you through all these steps and we will highlight the key steps that we've mentioned before the slide. So starting with logging into Tax portal, you will enter your credential details such as the email address, your password, and the security code showing on your screens. You will proceed by selecting the taxable person profile you would like to proceed with, and you will go to the taxable person profile where it says corporate tax filings and refunds. You will click on view all. Once you click on view all, you will have the filing details in which you need to check the period from and the details of the tax period. Once done, you will click on next where you will have the service details. You will go through all the details about the service, such as the eligibility criteria, the required documents, and you will confirm at the end of the page that you have read the above instructions and guidelines to start the procedure. So once you click on start, you will have the first page where it will show you in the box highlighted in green the 8 main steps for the corporate tax return application, where you will start with the taxpayer details. Second step should be elections. Third step should be accounting schedules. Fourth step is accounting adjustment and exempt income. Fifth step should be reliefs. Sixth step will be other adjustments. Seventh step is tax liability and tax credits. Eighth step, reviewing and declaring before submitting your return. Please note that based on your answers to the questions, you will be either electing for the small business relief. The steps should be less than these pages. And if you are a qualifying free zone person and you answered as a qualifying free zone person, you will have a new step that's only for the free zone details. So now let's proceed by reviewing this section that's displayed now in green, the filing period details based on your selected corporate tax return, where we've mentioned that you need to double check your tax period, and in case if it's incorrect, you will need to apply for an amendment first, and once approved, you will come back and complete your application. So let's start with the taxpayer details section, where it should be pre-populated from your registration application. You will need to select the correct legal type as we've mentioned during your return, and if you realize that the legal type is incorrect or either the tax period, you should be applying for a change entity type, and changing it requires FTA's review and approval and may delay your return if done on last minute. So proceeding with the address details section, where it should be pre-populated as well from your registration application. As we've mentioned, this question you need to answer it carefully, where you will select yes if the information is correct, and if it's incorrect, you will apply for an amendment as we've mentioned earlier. You will proceed to the taxable person information where you can update if applicable, and you will move to the unincorporated partnership details where you will need to answer questions carefully and proceed by scrolling down to the business activity details if applicable, and then you will complete the free zone details. Please note that this section you need to complete it carefully if you wish to proceed as a qualifying free zone person. As we've mentioned at the beginning of the demo that if you clicked that you are a qualifying free zone person, you will have the next step which should appear for the free zones only. So let's proceed to the next step where you will have the free zone details. As we've mentioned at the beginning, this step wasn't showing, but now as we proceed as a qualifying free zone person, this step appeared to us, so it allows you to update your free zone details relevant to you. You will start first by updating your revenue schedule details, such as adding the numeric values needed and answering the questions carefully. You will complete updating the revenue schedule where the total revenue for the de minimis requirement should be auto-calculated for your review. You will scroll down to the non-qualifying revenue details where you will enter it carefully, and you will have the total non-qualifying revenue auto-calculated for your review. This section you cannot update the de minimis calculation details, but you may proceed to the qualifying revenue where you can update it as well, and scroll down to the substance of the free zone details where you will need to enter it, and then move to updating the free zone confirmations where applicable to you, and then last section should be updating the additional information details based on each emirate, and you may add in any additional information as an optional. You will have the chance either to save as draft, cancel, or proceed to the next step. So let's proceed to the next step, which should be the elections. This is an important step as well, where you need to note that it's important that your financial statement must be signed and stamped, where this section will allow you to make the election relevant to you. You will proceed by adding the realization basis, and you will proceed to updating where you can make the election to apply for the transactional rules. And then this is an important step and important note to highlight, that you can make the election to apply for the small business relief in this step specifically, where you are only entitled if your revenue is 3 million or less. If your total revenue equal to or less than 3 million dirhams, you may elect for the small business relief, and in which case the tax return should be simplified to you with 2 to 3 pages long. So let's proceed to the transfers within qualifying group, where you can make an election in this step and then proceed to the business restructuring relief. And you can make an election to exempt for the foreign permanent establishment income, and then scroll down by reviewing and answering all the questions carefully and click on next step. You will have fourth step of the accounting schedule section, where it's been divided to you into 3 parts. The first part should be the statement of profit or loss, second part comprehensive income, and statement of financial position. An important note as well to highlight in this step, that all numeric values should be entered as positive, where the system will determine where positive or negative adjustment should be needed for the tax calculation. So you will start first by adding the statement of profit or loss, which is updating the operating revenue and the expenditure incurred in deriving operating revenue, where you need to add it all in a positive sign, and the auto calculated section should be for your review. Moving to updating the interest expense or income details, you will enter it carefully, and the net interest expense or income should be auto calculated as well. You will proceed to the net losses or gains on disposable of assets, where you will add all numeric values in a positive sign, and the system will read where positive or negative adjustment is needed, and the net should be auto calculated for your reference. You will update as well the foreign exchange gains or losses details, and you will find the net losses or gains auto calculated to you for your review. You will proceed by updating the expense of other income details if applicable, where the expense net of other income should be auto calculated for your review. You may find the net profit or loss in UAE dirhams auto calculated based on all the details and numeric values entered under the profit or loss section above. You will move to the statement of other comprehensive income, where you will need to update the statement of other comprehensive income details in this section, and you will proceed by reviewing the total comprehensive income for the year that should be auto calculated. And next you will update the assets details if applicable, and then proceed with updating the non-current assets details, where you will find total non-current assets and total assets auto calculated for your review. You will proceed by updating the liability details, where the total liabilities should be auto calculated, and you will do the same for the equity section, where the total equity should be auto calculated as well, and you will review the total equity and liabilities, which should be auto calculated based on all the details you have entered above. You will enter the total number of employees you have in the company, and you can update the audit details if applicable. As well, for the shareholder, you may click on add shareholder to add your shareholder and proceed to the next step. Fifth step should be the accounting adjustment and exempt income. As we've mentioned, this section will allow you to update the accounting income for adjustments, such as provisions adjustments and the realization basis adjustment, where you will update the exempt income by providing your details of all other income to be adjusted in the accounting income. You will start first in this step by entering your accounting income and answering the questions carefully. You will proceed by scrolling down and updating the same for the accounting income for the description, and then you will scroll down as well and continue updating all sections carefully. You will scroll down as well to move to the realization basis adjustments, where you will need to update it if applicable, and then scroll down to continue with updating the same section for the realization basis, and then you will proceed where you can update the transactional adjustments details if applicable by answering the question either with yes or no, and you will continue by scrolling down and answering all questions and adding the numeric values needed to the section. You can update the exempt income in this section, and then you will scroll down and continue with updating the same details, where for the foreign establishment income you will update it as well if applicable and proceed to the next step. So sixth step should be the reliefs, an important step as well, where it will allow you to include the adjustment which are arising from reliefs claimed, including transfers within a qualifying group or business restructuring relief where applicable. And as we've mentioned in the previous step, all numeric values should be entered as positive, where the system will calculate where positive or negative adjustment should be applied in the tax calculation. You will start first by updating the details of relief relating to transfers within a qualifying group by answering the questions carefully and scrolling down by updating the details of relief related to transfers within qualifying group. You will add all numeric value carefully, which should be all in positive, and next you will update the details of the relief related to the business restructuring relief by answering the questions carefully and continuing with adding the numeric values for the relief of the business restructuring, and you will proceed to the next step. Seventh step should be other adjustments, which will allow you to make the adjustment for non-deductible expenditure, adjustment for interest income or expenditure, transactions with related parties and connected persons if applicable, adjustment derived from a qualifying investment fund, and any other adjustments not covered yet, where we will go through in this step. And as we've mentioned, all numeric values should be added in positive. You will start by entering the details of the adjustments for non-deductible expenditure, and you will proceed by adding the description for the same. You will move by scrolling down to the adjustments for interest income or expenditure by answering the questions carefully, and if you answered with yes, you will need to add the interest capping schedule by clicking on the blue box highlighted, and you will have this pop-up page where you will need to enter the interest capping schedule details, and the non-deductible net interest expenditure brought forward should be auto-calculated for your reference. You will have the chance either to cancel and go back or save and go back. So let's assume we saved and go back to the main step. You will scroll down by reviewing and entering the adjustments for interest income or expenditure in this section, and you will move to the transactions with related parties and connected persons. In case if your answer to the question was yes, you will need to add the related party transaction schedule. So let's assume we answered yes. You will need to update this pop-up page where you will need to add the related party transaction schedule by clicking on add new item to add the gross income received, and you will enter the details of the gross income received from related parties if applicable. Once done, you will click on add and you will review it in this page. In this page you can view the details you have entered for your review, and you will proceed to the second title of the tile where it says expenditure paid to related parties. Once you click on it, you will click on add new item, and to add the expenditure paid to related parties. Once you click on it, you will have the pop-up page where you will need to enter the expenditure paid to related parties. Once done, you will click on add and you will review it in this page. Once you review it, you will proceed to the summary table where you can click on it and view the gross income received from related parties and other numeric values added by you for your review, and then you will click on save and go back to the main step. Once you proceed to the once you scroll down in the main step, you will find the additions as a result of adjustments to transactions which were not at arm's length auto-calculated for your review. You will proceed by adding the connected persons schedule by answering the question with yes, and you will click on the blue box. Once you click on it, you will click on add new item, where you will need to add the connected person's schedule details. Once done, you will click on add, and you can view the details for your review. You have entered here the same details, and then save and go back to the main step. Once you go back to the main step, you will enter the transactions with the related parties and connected persons if applicable, and you will proceed by adding the adjustment for income and expenditure derived from a qualifying investment fund, and then you will proceed to the other adjustments, where you may add any other adjustments that were not covered above, and then you will go to the next step. So the eighth step should be the tax liability and tax credits, where it will display your final tax liability. You will start first by reviewing the taxable income details, which should be auto-calculated as a result of the schedule and all numeric values you've provided. You can update the tax losses details in this section by either answering the question with yes or no. If answered by yes, you will need to add the tax losses schedule by clicking on the blue box and proceeding, where you cannot make any amendments to the grey out field in this section, but you will move to the second title of the tile, where you can add the tax losses claimed from other taxable person. Once you click on it, you will click on add a new item to add the tax losses claimed from other taxable person, and you will need to enter their details and proceed to the next step. You can view the details that you have entered here and proceed to the next step, which should be tax losses transferred to other taxable person. You will click on add new item as well, and you will add the required fields and complete it carefully. Once done, you will click on add, and you will proceed by saving and going back to the main step. You will find the tax losses details, which should be pre-populated and grey out for your reference. You will proceed to the tax calculation and tax credits, which should be auto-calculated as a result of the schedule you've provided. You may answer the question carefully, which is, does the taxable person wish to use any available tax credits? You will click on the tax credit schedule if yes, and once you click on it, you will need to add a new item to the tax credit schedule. You will complete all the required fields and add all the numeric values, and then you will click on add and review the page you have entered, where you can't do any changes in this page. You will proceed by saving and going back to the main step. You will find the tax calculations and tax credits, which should be pre-populated and grey out for your reference. You will proceed by updating the estimated or provisional figures included in the corporate tax return, and then finally you will add any and upload any additional attachments, either in PDF or document format. And an important note to note here, as you may view in this page, that the financial statement is at the top of the attachments, so please make sure that the financial statement is stamped before attaching it either in PDF or document format. With this, we've reached the ninth step, which is reviewing and declaring that all the given information is accurate. You may have a final look to review the all steps and all details and numeric values provided by you, and after carefully reviewing all of the information, you will click on the checkbox to declare that the correctness of the information provided in the corporate tax return is correct. You will click on submit, and once you click on yes, your corporate tax return was submitted successfully, where you will have a reference number once you submit it, and you can use this reference number for any future communication with the FTA. You may go back and view the application where it says under status that it's submitted. You may view the due date, the period to, period from, and the period description along with the application number for any future inquiries. Let's proceed now. Once you're done with the corporate tax return, you will need to do your payment process. So we will walk you through the payment process demonstration for the corporate tax return. You will enter to the Emirate Tax portal and click on the filing details, where you will go to the corporate tax and then click on my payments for the tax period you would like to proceed with. You will have the my payments page where you can view the total corporate tax payment due, the outstanding amount, and the due amount. You may click on select and pay on the total corporate tax payment due tail or a tile, or you can find the return liabilities here. You may add the amount that you would like to pay, either partial amount or the full amount. So let's assume we're paying a partial amount of the corporate tax return. You will proceed to the payment section where you will have two options for payment, either card payment or GI ban. You may choose your preferred payment method and answer the question with yes to proceed to the payment page, where you will need to enter your payment details and then click on pay. Once you've paid the amount successfully, you may download a PDF copy of the acknowledgement screen and click back to the dashboard to go to the main page, where you can view your payments, that you have the total outstanding amount and the overdue amount based on the amount you've paid. With this, we're done with the demo, and before proceeding to the Q&A section, we will have the key takeaways. Some of the key takeaways were covered in the previous demo, but we would like to double check and double and inform you with the required information. Starting with registration. You must ensure that you are registered for corporate tax, and you need to update your entity type and other required data to ensure that it's correct within the tax period. Moving to the tax period, you will need to check and make sure that the tax period, specifically the first tax period appearing in the registration information, is correct. And for the financial statements and accounting methods, as we've mentioned, taxpayers need to prepare and upload their financial statement along with the corporate tax return, where taxpayers with revenue of more than 3 million dirhams in the tax period will be required to prepare their accounts as per the IFRS or IFRS for SMEs. However, the qualifying free zone person and taxpayers with revenue of more than 50 million dirhams in the tax period need to get their financial statement audited, where you need to consider if you need to engage an accountant with an appropriate experience. Moving to the auditors, and when do you need to engage an auditor? You need to engage an auditor who should do so before the year end to ensure that the auditors are appropriately involved in the year-end activities, such as and including but not limited to stock take and cash count. For the record keeping, you need to make sure that you have the necessary records and information to support your corporate tax return and any applications or elections you would like to make. These records must be retained as per the requirements of the corporate tax law. Moving to the small business relief, and the question is, am I eligible to elect for the small business relief? You need to know that taxpayers with revenue of not more than 3 million dirhams should consider if they are eligible for the small business relief election and determine if they wish to claim the relief. Moving to the elections, you need to check whether you are eligible to make other election as part of your return filing, which includes record gains and losses on a realization basis, exclude income from foreign permanent establishment when determining taxable income, apply transactional rules, apply business restructuring relief, apply transfer within qualifying group relief, and finally be subject to tax at the standard rates instead of the rates applicable to a qualifying free zone person. For the tax residency status, you need to understand that your tax resident status and consider the impact of any applicable double taxation treaties on your resident status, where this is relevant for completing the corporate tax return. Moving to exemptions, certain exempt persons should be required to file an application with the FTA within 60 days of the end of their tax period. Moving to any additional support, you need to know that you need to consider whether you need any additional specialist support, as an example from a tax agent or specialist, to help you with preparing the corporate tax return, requesting a clarification, or any other activities. Moving to the auditors, you need to know that audited financial statements are required if you have revenue more than 50 million dirhams in the relevant tax period, you are a qualifying free zone person, and you need to know that the auditor must be a registered auditor. For the related parties and connected persons, the same person can be a related party and a connected person. If this is the case, you need to answer yes to both questions, whether you had any transactions with related parties or connected persons. However, you will only need to complete the details of the transaction under one of these categories, not under both of them, where all transactions with related parties and connected persons must be at arm's length. If this is not the case, the taxable person needs to make an adjustment in its return to reflect the arm's length amount. For the record keeping, you need to ensure that you have all the necessary records and information to support your corporate tax return, where these records must be retained for a period of 7 years from the end of the tax period. For the income earned outside the UAE, and if you are a tax resident of the UAE, you need to include your worldwide income in your return, not only in the income from UAE sources. And finally, the conditions to benefit from the initiative by the Ministry of Finance and the Federal Tax Authority, where they launched an initiative to waive your late registration penalties under the corporate tax law. This initiative is applicable to the corporate taxpayers and certain exempt persons who are required to register with the Federal Tax Authority. You will need to submit your tax return or annual declaration within 7 months from the end of the first tax period, where full compliance with provisions of the corporate tax law applies. And with this, I'll hand over back to my colleague Hissa.
Thank you, Roda, for providing clear instructions on how to apply for corporate tax return. Before moving to the Q&A session, please follow us on our social media channels to stay updated on our upcoming workshops and access our services. And now we will leave the QR code of the survey on the screen. Your participation is greatly appreciated. To learn more about your experience in today's session, please choose Corporate Tax Journey in question number 5, and the survey link will be provided in the chat box as well. Thank you. Hello, Rhoda. First question is, can I file one CT return for all companies I own?
Thank you, Hissa, for the question. If the companies meet the requirement to form a tax group and their application to form a tax group is approved, they can file a single UAE corporate tax return covering all members of the tax group. Where companies cannot form a tax group, they will need each to be required to file the corporate tax return on a standalone basis.
Thank you. Can any company, natural person, elect for the small business relief, or will the Federal Tax Authority inform them whether they are eligible or not?
An important question as well. The answer is yes. Election for small business relief is required to be made in the tax return for the relevant period. No application or intimation is required to or from the FTA as long as the revenue does not exceed 3 million dirhams. In case you elect the small business relief in your return, you can use the cash basis of accounting and no need to have a financial statement, but you must have a proof of your revenue.
Thank you. Will a free zone entity be required to register and file a CT return?
Yes, all free zone entities will be required to register and file a corporate tax return irrespective of whether they are a qualifying free zone person or not.
Moving to the next question. What is the time limit to file a tax return?
Thank you, Hissa. As a natural person who is a taxable person, they must file their corporate tax return with the FTA no later than 9 months from the end of the tax period. Natural persons should submit a single tax return for all their businesses and business activities subject to corporate tax return.
Who should submit the corporate tax return?
A tax return must be submitted by either a taxable person or another person who has the right to do so on behalf of the taxable person. As an example, a tax agent or legal representative, or the parent company of the tax group who should be required to file the corporate tax return on behalf of the tax group.
Thank you, Rhoda. Is it possible to correct my return and how?
Yes, if the correction is made before the due date, it should be considered as an amendment, and if it's made after the due date, it must be submitted as a voluntary disclosure through Emirate Tax. And that's why we would like to encourage you to start your corporate tax return from now so that you can have time in case if you need to amend or correct any step of the corporate tax return.
Thank you. Do we need a financial statement if elect small business relief?
Thank you, Hissa. This is an important question as well that we're receiving a lot. Taxpayers who elect the small business relief do not need financial statement but must be able to prove revenue if the FTA request. And if you did not elect for the small business relief, a financial statement must be prepared in terms of IFRS or IFRS for SMEs, where all taxable persons with revenue more than 50 million dirhams and a qualifying free zone persons irrespective of their revenue, must have an audited financial statement, where your financial statement should be signed and stamped before attaching it to the return.
My company did operate zero revenue. Do I need to file return for corporate tax?
This is an important question as well. If your company operates zero revenue, do you need to file a corporate tax return? If you have not earned any income in the tax period, you will still need to file your corporate tax return. You can elect the small business relief and you will have a simplified return. Or if you don't want to elect for the small business relief, you will need to complete as well the normal corporate tax return. Where amounts are nil, you will populate nil in the relevant fields. So either ways, you need to file your corporate tax return.
Thank you, Rola. Moving to the next question. Do profit and loss and balance sheet statements need to be generated from an accounting software, stamped and signed if the company is a non-qualifying free zone LLC with no revenues but expenses only?
Thank you, Hissa. The profit and loss and balance sheet need to be signed and stamped before attaching it to the tax return, where the amounts input in the tax return must match the amounts as per the financial statements. However, given that the company has no revenue, it may elect in its return for the small business relief, in which case no tax is payable and the financial statement need not to be attached to their return.
Our sister company has no business and no transactions. Its trade license expired and not renewed, and now we are under process of trade license cancellation. Can I process the deregistration of corporate tax now or after the completion of trade license cancellation?
The company needs to apply for deregistration within 3 months from the cessation of business or business activity, where you will need to attach the trade license cancellation to the deregistration application.
Thank you, Roda. One last question. All financial statements need to be signed and stamped if the revenue is over 3 million dirhams. Is it imperative to get it audited by auditors? And if so, is it mandatory for them to be in the register of the auditors in the UAE?
Thank you, Hissa. Only taxable persons with revenue above than 50 million dirhams need audited financial statement. However, if the company is a qualifying free zone person, it also needs an audited financial statement irrespective of whether the revenue amount, and the auditor must be a registered auditor.
Thank you, Roda, for your time and for providing clear answers to the questions. And now we are reaching the end of the session. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's workshop. Please